All right, how are you guys all doing today?
Good.
Cool. First, let me thank you for coming out today. I know it's kind of windy and it's pretty cold and rainy. To me, that's a great day for a presentation to be inside. So we're going to unpack a lot today. Just to let you guys know, my presentation is probably going to be right around 45 minutes, maybe between 45 minutes and an hour. So if anybody needs something to drink, feel free to take care of yourself, or if you have to use the restroom or anything like that. So, Fading Ads of Indiana. This is really exciting. I've been really excited for this presentation coming up. I go around, I talk to people about fading ads, and sometimes when I talk to them about it, their faces kind of gloss over a little bit. They look at it like these ads, like they don't know what's so big of a deal about them, and maybe there's not. But I found a few things that I can share with you that I think make these ads pretty special. There we go. So before I get into it, I'm going to give you some background information about me. It's only right to kind of tell you how my journey led all the way to getting all these ghost signs and all this traveling around Indiana that I did. I'm born and raised right here in Northwest Indiana. I'm a photographer, video producer, author, marketing director, graphic designer, and a musician. So I kind of do a lot of different things, a lot of different levels. Born and raised in Hammond, Indiana. So I'm a Gavitt High School graduate, if you guys are familiar with Hammond. So I went to Gavitt, and after that I went to IU. So I went down to IU. I focused my attention on television production. So I went down to IU thinking that I was going to work for Chicago. I was going to go to the news station, work for ABC or something like that. Lo and behold, I found out that if I wanted to work for a station like that right off the bat, I was going to pretty much be mopping floors to start. And so that didn't really interest me right after college. I wanted to do my own thing. I was motivated. I was hungry. So but I did study television production. When I graduated, it was 2003. It was 3 years before YouTube. So I feel like digitally, I was a little bit ahead of my time in regards to some of the education that I was getting down at IU. But it ended up being great because I was able to use that as I moved down. And when I was down at IU, I actually had the opportunity to work with John Mellencamp for a little while. So that was really cool. He produced an album, or I should say our IU documentary class produced an album. It's called Trouble No More, the making of a John Mellencamp album. And so I got to go to his studio and got to meet him and stuff like that. I didn't get a ton of interactions like with him directly. I was kind of behind the scenes, but it was a really, really cool experience. This is the album, and it actually ended up winning an Emmy Award a year later in September. So won a regional Emmy Award for Best Entertainment Special. So that was really cool. Working with John Mellencamp was really cool too. If you know anything about him, he's definitely a my way or the highway type of guy. He's a little bit he's gregarious. He's a little bit ornery. But he was great with us kids. So we got to kind of see some of that, but he was great to everybody, all the students that were there. My photography journey mainly started in 2005. So as I said, when I was down at IU, I was a video production student. So video production and photography are really, really close. There's a whole lot of similarities. It's basically just motion picture versus still pictures. So after I graduated from college, I actually ended up going on a trip to Las Vegas, and I bought my first DSLR camera, which is a camera that I can actually change all the lenses. It's a semi-professional camera. And I was like, hey, I'm going to go to Vegas. I'm going to get some good pictures. So I went out to Vegas. I took a bunch of pictures. This is also right when social media started getting popular. MySpace, Facebook. You guys remember MySpace? Anybody? Was anybody on that? Yeah. So and I would post pictures just like everybody else. And after my trip, I would post pictures of Las Vegas. And I had people reach out to me that was like, hey, that's a really cool picture of Vegas. Can we use that picture? My company would like to use that picture and make a keychain. So that kind of gave me some ideas of like, okay, well, people are interested in my pictures. Maybe some of them are good enough that I can actually sell them and do something with it. So this kind of sparked like, hey, I'm having fun taking pictures, but I can also do something business related with this. So I began taking pictures around Northwest Indiana. That's really how it started, taking nature pictures, pictures of downtowns. And I'm from Hammond, so I was using Hammond as my canvas. And Hammond's a really eclectic city. There's a lot of stuff all the way around. There's industry, there's parks, there's just a lot of different things. So Hammond was a good playground, and I was living in Hammond at the time too, so it made it very convenient. And that's a picture of my sister. So I would take her around with me and pose her up, and we found a bale of hay or something. I was like, hey, take a picture here. And just for fun, and we would post them up, and I would give them to her, and she'd put on her Facebook and stuff like that. So one of the reasons why I did this is when I was at IU, and I would tell people where I was from, and I was from Hammond, everybody had a really gritty image of Hammond if they weren't from the area. I knew what Hammond was. I knew that there was some grit in Hammond, and I certainly wasn't blind to that. But I also knew all the really, really cool stuff. That Hammond had a beach, Hammond had Lake Michigan. There's just a lot of really cool stuff. So I was internally frustrated when I went to IU and people were like, "Where's Hammond?" "Oh yeah, that's it. Oh, you guys got all the mills up there." And it was basically an extension of Gary. That's how it was looked at. And so I wanted to change how people thought of Hammond. So I started taking pictures, and all the pictures I took of Hammond were positive pictures. I would always post positive stuff. I didn't post abandoned buildings and broken windows and stuff. It was mainly positive buildings. And then beyond Hammond, it kind of expanded out to other cities, mainly in Lake County. And then I started adding these pictures to Wikipedia. So I'm sure most of you guys have probably been on Wikipedia at some point. The main image for the town, still to this day, I have an image that's representative of the town. So that's kind of cool. They've been up there for like 20 years. And in 2005, that really started my journey across Northwest Indiana. So not only Hammond, I wanted to improve the image of all the cities in Northwest Indiana. When you went to Google and you would do an image search and you would type in Hammond, mostly what you would come across would be real estate photos or like industrial type of stuff. So I wanted people to go to Google, be able to type Hammond, Indiana, and see something that was really cool and really impactful to be able to say, hey, Hammond's a pretty school. I've never been up there, or it's a pretty city. I've never been up there before. Maybe I should check it out. So that expanded to all the cities, and I started taking pictures of every city in Northwest Indiana that falls in the Central Time Zone. So all 6 counties. I was taking pictures of landmarks, festivals, all different seasons. I would go to the same spots in the wintertime after a fresh snow and just try and really capture all that. And I really wanted to just blow up Northwest Indiana and really make it look like it was a place to be. And so this is what Cedar Lake looks like. So if you were to go to my album right now, this is a screenshot from it. This is just part of it. I couldn't fit the whole entire album on it. But this is generally what I would do. So I would go to a town and I would try and capture what the essence of that town is. So the essence of Cedar Lake to me was the museum. We had a lot of pictures of the museum. Of course, the lake. And there's various things around Cedar Lake. There's some signage. And then there's winter scenes. I have a drone, so occasionally I go out and I take some pictures. These are really cool winter scenes after a fresh snow about 2 years ago or so. And this is what I do. So I go up, I use a drone once in a while, but for the most part, I actually rent out a helicopter, and I go in a helicopter. I call them ahead of time. They take off the door. I'm strapped in. I'm kind of double strapped in. It's pretty scary. It's a little wild. I mean, that helicopter right there, I was getting in it, I think, right after this picture. So, but I fly around Northwest Indiana, and I take pictures sometimes for real estate companies. Sometimes I just rent it out because maybe I have an idea, so I'll front the money and pay for it and try and get some pictures. One time I had an idea of wanting to get a picture of every single downtown in Northwest Indiana with the Chicago skyline in the background. And that's still something I really want to go for. I have a couple cities that you can see the Chicago skyline, but I'd like to get them all. So that's actually me in the helicopter over on the right. You can see my arm just a little tiny bit. I'm hanging out of the helicopter with another photographer my mom actually took that picture from another helicopter. And then the one on the very top, that's over Traverse City, Michigan. That's actually the highest I've ever been in a helicopter. That's over 8,000 feet in the air. Helicopters don't generally go that high. That's really, really high. So that's 1.5 miles. For helicopters, they generally fly between 500 and 2,000 feet. They're generally in that low range. So that's pretty far up there. And I had the door off, so it was pretty wild. So this is Cedar Lake in the summertime. You can see up in the top left, yeah, you can see the Chicago skyline. So you can actually see the Chicago skyline really, really clearly from Cedar Lake. I wish I had a clearer day. It was a little bit hazy that day. But I just want to show you, since we're in Cedar Lake, that this is one of the aerials I took, and you can actually see the full skyline up there. So when you go to my website, I mentioned that I have all these pictures and albums of Northwest Indiana. So these are all the cities and towns that fall into Northwest Indiana in that 6-county area, everywhere that falls in the Central Time Zone. It's all alphabetized. If you were to click into each one of these, you would see like that Cedar Lake album. You would see just a whole bunch of pictures. There's options for people to be able to just view them. You can order prints. There's photo prints, metal prints, all kinds of different options. So it's pretty much unlimited what you can do. You can order playing cards, coasters. I mean, there's all kinds of different stuff. So if you found a picture that you liked of Crown Point, of the courthouse or something, and you want to make some cards out of it, hey, have at it. So that's Northwest Indiana. So as I mentioned, I really wanted to change how Northwest Indiana appeared online. When you went onto Google and you typed in Lowell, Indiana, or Cedar Lake, Indiana, I wanted to really enhance that. So this is an example of Lowell, Indiana. So right now, I took this screenshot, I think 2 days ago. All the photos that are circled are actually my photos. They're coming either from my website or I've licensed them to the town itself or something. But these are just kind of sprinkled in here. So I wanted to really kind of fill that up and get rid of some of the older pictures. Lowell didn't really have an issue having older industrial pictures, but this is also an example that I did for Hammond and for Gary and stuff too. So that was ultimately my goal, was to be able to get these pictures on here and get the bad stuff off. In 2008 through 2016, I did a lot of storm chasing. So, and I don't even know if I would say storm chasing. I did a lot of storm standing. I kind of just went to a spot and I waited for the storm to come in, and then as soon as it got up to me, I tried to get out of there as quick as I could. So this one I actually took in Cedar Lake. This was in 2013. One note about this: so if you know where Shoe Corner is, most of you guys probably know where Shoe Corner is. It's just south of Shoe Corner. And one thing that's really cool about this is that I had submitted it to the Times and to some other news organizations. The Times put it on their front page the day after, because it ended up being a really big storm. It was a big derecho and stuff that came in. And then after that, the Newseum, which is in Washington, D.C., it's on the National Mall. It actually doesn't exist anymore, but every single day they would put 10 front page headlines of newspapers from around the country, the ones with the most shocking headlines or descriptive pictures or something like that. And so this front page actually was shown on the Newseum in Washington, D.C. the day after, which was really, really cool. So only 10 get chosen every single day. I have the screenshot at home. I should have put the screenshot in here of the other 10, but a lot of them were about storms because it was a big storm day that day. As I was taking all these pictures of Hammond, I decided that in order for me to really make good on my promise to myself of making Hammond look like a different place, I wanted to actually take these photos and give them to the city. So I arranged for a meeting with the mayor of Hammond, and I had 30 or 35 or so photos, and I had them on a USB drive, and I was basically like, here, these are good photos of Hammond, I think. If they're not, then you don't have to use them, but you guys can have these and use them for whatever you want on your website, in your flyers, marketing, anything that you want. And there were photos of the marina, of Wolf Lake, of just really, really nice scenic pictures. And the mayor was like, well, what do you want for these? Should we pay you? And I told him, this is what I want to do. This is kind of my passion thing. This is why I'm doing this. So, and since then, me and the mayor have a great relationship. I do a lot of stuff for the city of Hammond. I've been the official photographer for Festival of the Lakes for the last 5 years in a row, which is really cool. I get to hang out with some of the big acts, which is a lot of fun. And so it's been a very fruitful relationship, but that was also just me making good on my promise of wanting to build up Hammond. 2016 through 2017, I expanded all the way to Indiana. So all the major cities in Indiana, I wanted to get down to Indianapolis. I had already been to Indianapolis quite a few times and had pictures, but I didn't have so much from Evansville, from New Albany, from Muncie, from Fort Wayne, a lot of these other major minor cities that are in the state. So I wanted to go out there and get pictures. I started by this time seeing that people had an interest in my pictures and they were licensing them. They would call me up and say, hey, we want to use a picture of Crown Point for a brochure or a flyer or a website. And so I was doing a lot of that. So at this point, it was just, hey, how can I grow this? How can I expand this? And it was fun, too. I got to drive around Indiana and go to all these cities that I would have never find myself in. I'm never in Muncie, so I don't get to explore Muncie very often. So I had an excuse to go down there and drive around. So I focused a lot on Indianapolis and also Indiana University. That's my alma mater. I'm a graduate of IU. And I started focusing really hard on Indiana University and the campus photos down in Bloomington. This is a picture of my map. So these are all the pictures, all the stars there are places that I've been and I've captured photos of those cities. There's some places that probably don't have stars on there. I have to check if I need to update it, but I've been to 355 of the 569 cities in Indiana. So, and again, my goal is to capture the historic downtown, capture the essence of what that town is, whether it's a landmark or some goofy sign or something like that. But that's where I've been. And when you look closely, you can almost see my pathways as I drive. Some of the stars kind of make lines. You can see the little areas that I drove. And as I started going around Indiana, this is where the fading ads started coming in. This is where I started really developing my collections. So, and by collections, I started getting photos of county courthouses, vintage signs, railroads, agriculture, a lot of different stuff, theater marquees, movie houses, old theaters, stuff like that. And it was really, really neat. This was the time that I started collecting some of the ghost signs. And I will get to the ghost sign part in a second. This is one of my collections right here. So with the Indiana collections, I put together all of these county courthouses, and I put this nice frame together. There's lawyers and judges and stuff that have been really interested in this, but this was just a fun project. I got to get to all 92 counties and take a really nice picture and make this layout. So this is just an example of one of the collections that's in there. And then in 2018, I actually became a licensed photographer for Indiana University. So I'm an official collegiate licensed photographer. So that really turned up the volume on driving around the state, because it's 3 hours to Bloomington, and there's a lot in between. So here I am going back and forth to Bloomington, taking pictures of the sample gates and the football stadium before Indiana University was awesome at football. So that was a lot of fun. So I really started getting a lot of that IU stuff and taking a lot of photos in between there. So hitting up these towns like Lebanon, Mooresville, Martinsville, a lot of the towns that are in between there. And I started making art installations. So a lot of people ask me, hey, you're doing all these pictures and stuff. How are you making money? What are you doing to make business? So this is a little bit of what I do. So I do a lot of large art installations where companies hire me out. They might just buy the digital file, and I don't even touch the work or the installation. They just purchase or license the file from me. So these are a couple examples. That wall on the right side, that's actually in Morocco, Africa, and that's a scene from New York City. So that's a restaurant. They did a 30-foot wall scene of the Tribeca area of Manhattan, and that's Traverse City down there, and of course Indianapolis and some other stuff. So that's what I do with the photos. So I have there's a big hospital in Indianapolis on the east side. They're using all of my work in their hospital. So that's over in the Irvington neighborhood, if you're familiar with that. In 2018, there was a fire at the historic Straw Building. So the historic Straw Building was in downtown Hammond. That's the Mercantile Building right behind it. So if you're familiar with downtown Hammond, this is right on Homan Avenue on the east side of Homan. And in 2018, when the Straw Building burned down, which was a former piano factory, it revealed this sign. After they removed all the debris, this sign was revealed, and it hadn't been seen in over 100 years. The Straw Building was built, I think, in 1924. So this building right here was an exterior wall for where that tall building sits right now. So that building kind of sat wedged, or this wall right here sat wedged between the two buildings for a long time. The building in the back was built in 1967. So this front face hadn't been seen in 100 years. So, and that's kind of what led me to get some interest in these ghost signs. Like, how long do they last? And they just appear out of nowhere. It's just really, really cool. And it's almost like an archaeological find. You're digging, and all of a sudden you find, something in your dig that you didn't expect. It's really cool. And so I started getting more interested and started learning about these signs and learning about why do they stay around so long, for one. And I found out that they stay around a long time because back then they used lead in the paint. And lead adheres to brick really, really well. So well that it lasts for hundreds of years. So this one right here, for example, this is a Coca-Cola sign. It's in South Bend. This is most likely lead paint. I wasn't able to actually date the sign. My best guess is that this sign was probably painted, just by the condition and in my research, it was probably painted in the 60s. It might have been painted one time earlier and then repainted in the 60s, but it's probably at least 50 years old of wearing. So I'm not 100% sure if there's lead in this paint, but certainly in the paint behind it, on the old Coca-Cola ad, there was. So around 2018, as I mentioned, I started seeing all these ghost signs. I saw that Straub sign, and I went and took all these pictures of it. And now whenever I went into a city, I couldn't see them. I couldn't unsee them. So it was literally like I had ghost vision. So I would go into cities like Lafayette, and I would they were like popping out everywhere. Now I've been to Lafayette quite a few times. And so, I'm looking at these things like they just got painted up, and like, oh, what's this right here? Oh, what's this? And so it was really, really neat, and it was brand new to me. This one right here is in Walkerton, so if you guys are familiar with Walkerton. And so, as I began my journeys around Indiana, I started being more intentional with the pictures that I took of the signs. So rather than them just being a part of the background or something that was just kind of in the photo but not really focused on. I actually started framing it up and really getting different angles, and sometimes I would even go ahead of time and see like how the lighting's come in. Is this an east-facing building? Is the sun going to be hitting it in the morning or in the afternoon? So there was a lot of stuff that started going through my mind as I started on this journey of collecting these signs. So 2018, fatherhood. So I became a dad in 2018. So that's my little boy Parker. He's the cutest little boy in the world. I have 2 kids now. I have Madeline too. I have a little girl. So, but 2018. So I was a father now. So that kept me home a little bit more through 2019. He was born at the end of 2018. So most of my season was already done by 2018 by the time he came. So 2019 though, I stayed a little closer to home. And I got some pictures in Indianapolis and went down to Bloomington a few times. But the next year, COVID hit. So you guys remember COVID, right? Yeah, man. So COVID hit. So that changed everything for what I was doing. I mean, what I was doing before was really being public and really being out there and talking to people and going to buildings and looking for building owners and just really being a people person and kind of getting around. I couldn't do that. Everything was shut down. And so what I could still do, I could still drive around. I wasn't not letting myself go in a car or anything like that. But I knew I had to reel it in that year, and we just kind of, just like you guys all experienced, we just kind of had to see how things were going to go. So at that time, though, it was almost a good thing. Not that COVID was a good thing, but it was a good thing that I had an opportunity to stay at home, because by this time I had so many folders of photos, Indianapolis photos, that I couldn't even get to. I was taking photos faster than I can do anything with. So, and that started to weigh on me. Just like, when you guys are cleaning your house and your house really starts getting like really, really icky, and you know that you got it, that's how I felt. I felt like that from a digital standpoint, though. I had clutter all over me. So I really wanted to kind of get this out. So COVID, a lot of that time was spent editing and building these albums and coming up with ideas. And also, now that I had so many pictures in Indiana, I started finding all these collections. I was like, wow, I've taken lots of pictures of water towers. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of towns in Indiana, there isn't much more than a water tower. That's the truth. So as I was thinking of what else can I do with all these photos, my son, he loves goodnight books. He loves going and reading Goodnight Moon and all these goodnight books. So at that time, I was a collegiate licensed photographer of IU. I had all these IU pictures, and I'm selling a lot of IU pictures, but I always had this thought of like, well, what else can I do with these IU pictures besides just constantly selling pictures? So I did a little research, and I was like, well, I wonder if there's any kids' books, like maybe a goodnight book or something like that. Parker loves these goodnight books so much, and as a really proud alumni myself, I knew how exciting it would be to have something that you walk through and you can say, I walked on these paths and all this stuff. So I had an idea, and I hired an illustrator. Actually, I hired 3 illustrators. I sent them that photo that's on the front, and I got 3 examples back of the illustrators. They made an illustration for me of the sample gates, and one of them just blew me out of the water, and that's the one right there. So I knew at that moment, hey, I have an illustrator. I have a really good illustrator. He was really affordable, so I was able to kind of go forward with this project. So as I went through and kind of decided how the book was going to be, I wanted it to be a campus tour. So there were 2 or 3 other IU books that were out there, but they had nothing to do with the campus. They didn't have any scenes or anything. I wanted people that went to the IU campus to be able to open up and be like, I've walked there, I've done this, I've been in this building, all that stuff. So, 'cause that's how I feel when I see stuff too. So after a little bit of research, I hired that illustrator. He did my cover. I did 3 or 4 or 5, I can't remember how many more pictures. And then after I had about 5 illustrations, I sent it to Indiana University Press. They have their own internal press, and they were so excited. They emailed me back the next day. They were like, hey, can we set up a call on Monday? And I think this was Thursday or Friday. So I was really excited because they responded so quick. I had always heard nightmares of, I'm going to send it to a million different places and nobody's going to respond. They responded in a day. So that was, I think luck was on my side. So we ended up going forward and publishing the book. They were super excited. We got on the call and they were like, hey, we want to go forward with this. We ended up having, we set everything out as far as when the book was going to come out and just all the different things that you need to do for publishing. And then the book was released in September of 2023. So it's been out for just over 2 years. It sold out of its first 1,000 run copies in 20 days, which was super incredible. The publisher wasn't prepared for that, so they had to hustle and hurry up and get some because we were sold out for Christmas. So by mid-November, we had more copies in. But that was really cool. So that was a little detour off the science. Fading Ads of Chicago. So this is the book that inspired me to write this book about Indiana. So while I was with my wife and my kids out in Orland Park, we were in Barnes & Noble store, and I'm flipping through. I like to go through the local books and see what they have and stuff. And so I was flipping through the local books, and I came across this book. So as I was looking through them, I was just kind of standing there flipping away, and every page was a really vibrant sign. And a lot of them were older. Joseph Marlin, he started taking the pictures in the 70s, so they ranged from the 70s all the way through about 10 years ago or so. So I'm flipping through the book, and I said to Rose, my wife, I was just like, hey, I have all kinds of these signs all over Indiana, like lots and lots and lots of them. She's like, really? And I was like, and I had shown her a couple. She knew I did, but I was like, no, I really have a lot of them. So she was just kind of like laughed, and I was like, all right. So I went home, and I was like, well, I'm going to look into this. I'm going to see who Joseph Marlin is, who the publisher is, and just this other stuff. Sure enough, there was 8 other books that were published about fading ads of different respective cities. So there was one about the Twin Cities, Cincinnati, Detroit, New York City has one, St. Louis has one, mainly old cities. So you think of old cities like St. Louis and Detroit. Those are cities that are ripe for these type of signs. So once I found that, I was like, hey, I have to shoot my shot here, and I'm gonna reach out to the publisher, and I'm gonna let them know I have all these pictures of Indiana. So I had cataloged all my fading ads. I put them into one album because I knew I was gonna have to send them a sample, give them an idea of what I had. And Fading Ads of Indiana came to life. So January of 2025. So it's only been a little over a year. I reached out to the publisher and said exactly what I just explained. I was like, I have all of these signs. I have so many of them. And at the time, I think I counted, I had about 140. So I didn't know if that was a whole lot or if that was enough for a book. I had no idea. I just felt like I had a lot. So I was like, hey, I have all these signs. Here's a link to all these signs, and you could see them. And they were really happy with the samples that I sent them. One thing that was going to be different about this book that I was pitching to them is that everything they had done before was based on the city. It was just a very small geographical area, Boston, Philadelphia, just the city. This was going to be a little bit different. It was a statewide one. The geography obviously is huge, but that also gives a big marketing opportunity too. So now, instead of having Indianapolis, which has 1.5 million people, now we're marketing to 6.5 million people. So now this book essentially is large enough to market to a population the size of New York City. So they liked that idea. They thought, hey, this is pretty cool. So we worked out what our parameters were going to be. The guideline was going to be 170 photos included in the book, and I had to put between 18,000 and 20,000 words. Now, you all, I am not a writer. I have never been a writer. I'm not even a big reader. I love reading picture books, because I'm just a visual person. And it's not that I don't read or I'm not good at it. I'm good at it. When I sit and read, I find myself thinking, my thoughts are exploring, and I think of I should be doing something else or something too. So I didn't know how I was going to do 18,000 to 20,000 words. That was daunting to me just seeing that number. So, but sure enough, it worked out. This is just a very small part of the link that I sent to the publisher, so you can have an idea of what they saw. So now this goes on forever. And out of these pictures, I think there's 25 pictures of these. 15 of them are in my book. So this, my whole library is probably, they're probably 10, maybe 10, it's probably 10 times this size right here. But as you go through, I'll let you just kind of get a little visual of some of the signs in there. You see a lot of variety. Most of these are, actually I think all of these ones are really, really old. Probably at least 70 or 80 years old for most of them. So while I was pitching this book, Fading Ads of Indiana, after we signed the contract, I waited till we signed the contract. I also mentioned to the guy, I was like, hey, I have this other book that I've been working on. It's done. And at the time, I did have it done, and I was working with the publisher in Indianapolis. It was a very small publisher. They did very small, short runs, and they only did print runs once a year. So it was very limited. They told me that if I wanted to go through them, it would be at least a year wait, and it might be 2 years. So they were like, hey, if you want to go somewhere else, we totally get it. And so I pitch to them. I was like, hey, I have this publisher. I haven't committed to them or anything. I have this book about Northwest Indiana. It's all done. You guys want to take a look at it? And I told them about Goodnight IU2 and some of the success with it. And they were like, yeah, let's do this one too. So that was really cool. I didn't expect that. Sweet Dreams Northwest Indiana actually just came out in November. I don't know if you saw any of my marketing videos that I did out in the fall, but I was hitting everybody's Facebook feeds probably pretty hard. I had some big signings over in November at the Barnes & Noble store in Cherville as well as in Valpo. But this has really been a big hit, and this is kind of obviously an ode to our area. We have the museum right here as the Cedar Lake featured photo. Ghost hunting through 2025. So now that 2025 was here and I had a signed contract, I had a deadline of June 1st to have all the photos submitted, and I had a deadline of, they told me initially June 30th. They wanted the manuscript written, but then they extended it all the way out to September because they had some print things going on or whatever. So I had to figure out how am I going to get the remaining photos, because at this point I knew I had about 140. I needed to add about 30 more pictures. So I needed to go through the book and figure out what I was going to add, what types of pictures I was going to add, and most importantly, where I was going to add. I wanted to make sure that I covered Indiana very well. I didn't want any big gaps. You guys remember my map that I put up there earlier? I didn't want any big gaps where I wasn't at all. I wanted anybody that picked up the book to be like, oh, this is right in the town next to me, or this is in my town. I wanted it to be geographically marketable. So I had to go through and pinpoint every single sign that I had and look for my gaps in the state. And then I had to go on Google Maps on the street view, and I'm driving around, on street maps and stuff like that, looking for signs, and then I'd write it down. And so I took a lot of notes, a lot of screenshots, a lot of notes. And I was growing a long beard while I was doing it too. So I look a little different now. I mean, I still have the long hair, but at the time, before last November, I had never grown facial hair for more than a week in my life. I've always shaved my beard, and so I don't know if that was part of it, but it felt right, so I just kind of let it keep going, and it just was its thing. So it had its own life of its own, and it just became fun, and it started getting fun as I started taking pictures. So I started through 2025 because I was going so gung-ho on these ghost signs. I started taking pictures, and I was posting them on Facebook and stuff, and I was always in different towns and stuff too. So that was really cool. And I started, of course, adding to my collection, and I was going for my goal of 170. I actually got them to extend it a little bit more because once I got to 170, I actually found more photos. So I told them, I was like, please, can we do 180? And they're like, okay. They ended up raising the book price $2 because I went 10. Yeah, so I didn't know that. I didn't know about that until later. So I thought they were just being nice, and but it's $2 more because of my request. So sorry about that. So Fading Ads of Indiana. So now I'm building the book. So I had to figure out a lot of things with this book. Like, what parameters would I set for a photo to be included in the book? Like, what would have to qualify to be in the book? Because there's old signs all over Indiana. So I had to go through and really think about that. I researched the book that I bought, the Chicago book. So going through there, most of the signs were on brick ads. They weren't old billboards. They weren't spray painted on concrete. They were mostly on old brick ads. So that's how I decided to kind of do it. I was going to stay traditional and go with the old brick ads, but I also needed to figure out how I was going to categorize them. So the wide range of ads of different companies and brands and stuff was really, really wide ranging. So I couldn't break them up into categories. I wasn't going to do a food category and then an agriculture category. There was just too many, and you guys would be frustrated reading the book. So I decided that I'd break it up by geography. So one of the things, I'm in a lot of ghost sign groups on Facebook, and one of the things that these people that are in the groups do is they chase the signs, right? They go location to location. They might see somebody post a picture, and maybe later they'll go and take their own picture of it. So I wanted to make sure that I had all the locations of all the signs because I knew people were going to use it as a roadmap in some ways, and so I knew I needed to include that. I expanded to 180 pictures, as I mentioned, and I was continuing to make it geographically marketable across the state of Indiana. So for the ghost sign qualifications, there was no standard at all. So even when I went through the other books, I flipped through the other books, there was no standard. It was just kind of, it was just a free-for-all for the most part. So I had to decide specifically with this book how I was going to do it, and I found that it was easier to disqualify signs. I had a lot of good ones, And I'll show you some examples of why I disqualified some signs, but it turned out it was easier to disqualify them than to actually figure out what the qualification was for it. And some of the disqualifications would be, you know, an old sign on a billboard or something like that, or maybe an old painted sign that's on the side of a building that's still in existence, maybe because it's just faded because they painted it 10 years ago. That's not really a ghost sign. That wasn't the type of ghost sign I was looking for in the book, though. I was looking for really, really historical old signs. So the signs did have to be on a brick surface, although I did allow 2 exceptions in there. There's a Grand Trunk Railroad Bridge in South Bend, and there's a barn side that I included in there too, because Mail Pouch Tobacco did a lot of barn side stuff, so I wanted to include one in there. And I had to decide whether I wanted to include any of the restored signs. When you go around Northwest Indiana also, but throughout Indiana there's restored signs. So a lot of Coca-Cola ones, Mail Pouch Tobacco, Gold Medal Flour, that's another one I saw. I probably saw more Gold Medal Flour signs than any of them. And of course the geographical location was important. The backstories, this is the fun part. So as I'm on this journey, there are so many backstories that I can share with you of, you know, how I got the sign or how I stumbled across it or meeting the owners or something like this. So I'm going to give you this one really quick. So in 2025, I found a photo that somebody posted in one of these ghost sign groups, and it was an interior picture of this gold medal sign on the right. So I took this picture. You could see it's a really, really cramped room. It's in the small building right there. That building is actually called an alleyway build-out. So it used to be an alley back in the day, and in 1947 they closed in the alley and they just built a building out of it. So it was just an alley. So it's only about 10 feet wide. It's a really, really small room. This used to be the home for the tiny Statue of Liberty Museum in Indianapolis, which was a really novelty shop, and this guy had everything that you can imagine Statue of Liberty. So they closed shop about a year ago, and the owner still owned it, and I found out about the sign. So I reached out. I was able to get a hold of the owner, and she said, sure, yeah, you can come down. I'd be happy to show you. I'll give you the backstory and tell me a little bit about it. So she gave me some backstory about it. Well, that was in April. So September came around. I was about a week before my publishing deadline, and she calls me up. Her name's Julie. She calls me up frantically. She said, Joey, did your deadline come up yet for publishing? I said, no, it's actually due this coming Monday or Tuesday. I don't remember what day it was. She's like, okay. She's like, I sold the building, and I sold it to the developer, and they ripped the whole roof off. You could see the whole sign all the way up. I said, you're kidding me. Can you come down to Indianapolis? I said, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. So I got all my stuff ready, and I called her, and I was like, hey, Julie, since I'm coming down, I'm going to take this picture. I don't really need the new one for the book, but it would be great to have. But I have this idea of something else I want to do. I want to do it like a little documentary, because you have a great story, and she did have a really, really good story. Do you mind if I bring my video stuff down and I videotape you telling your story and maybe talk to your developer if he's around too? Oh yeah, that'd be great. So I came down with all my equipment and stuff like that, and got a whole documentary shoot about this whole thing, which is really cool, which I'll tell you about a little bit more about in just a bit. So this is the sign after it was removed. So you can see the joists where they went in the holes, right where the dark area kind of starts right there. So everything above that was removed. You can't really see a whole lot of it. The notable part is that it says Washburn and Crosby's, which that basically dates the Gold Medal Flour sign to before 1928. 1928, because General Mills bought Washburn and Crosby in 1928. So this sign is older than that. We estimate that because that building was built in 1911, that it was painted sometime between 1911 and 1928. Now, part of the backstory with this is that when they had this shop, and they had this little shop, they decided to do a remodel one day, this Julie and her partner. And as they were doing that, they took off the plaster off the wall and they started chipping off the plaster. As they chipped off the plaster, they started revealing the sign. And they didn't want to damage it. They saw what great condition it was in. So they actually hired somebody, and it took them 2 months to chip all of it like meticulously, just I can't even imagine. So, and you can see when you look at it, there's scores all over that sign. Those scores were actually from 1947 before they put all the plaster on it. They had to score the wall to put the plaster on it so it would stick to the wall, because it wouldn't stick to the paint. So all those scores, which actually look really cool when you look at it up close, go back to 1947. So, and we know that it was built around 1947 because in one of those joist holes, they pulled out newspaper, and the newspaper had the date. It said October 10th, 1947 on it. So we were doing all this research, and he's like, when I got there that morning, he's like, you won't believe what I found. He's like, I dated it. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, 1947. He showed me the paper. I took a picture of it and everything. It was really cool. So, and it's part of the documentary too. So this is the second backstory. So this is the Bollinger Hancock building in Seymour, Indiana. So if you're familiar with Seymour, Indiana, this building is it's on 2nd and Chestnut. It's the main flagship building of downtown Seymour. It's a 3-story building. It was built in the 1870s. Goes back a long way. It's a red brick building, or it was red brick. On the side of this building is a mail pouch tobacco sign. Now this one is unique because it has the logo over here, which most of them way back then didn't include that logo, and the font is different. So the font has a serif type of font if you look really close. That was one of the original fonts that they used when they started painting the original mail pouch sign. So they haven't used this font in, I think, since 1890 or so on these signs. So I was in Seymour for a completely different reason. Again, I was making my book more geographically marketable, so I had 2 other signs that I popped into Seymour to take photos of, and I just happened to cross this one right here. So, and I'll show you a picture of the full building in a second, but when I saw this building, for one, I was amazed because I knew it didn't look like this before. I had been in Seymour about 2 years before, and I knew this building was bright red. And so, but what struck me is that whoever preserved this building meticulously pressure washed all the red paint off of it and purposely saved this. And obviously you can see that it's framed out against a very modern look, which is really, really cool. So it's very striking when you see it. So this is the flagship. I mentioned some of this already, but the owner was on site actually when I was there. So I had parked just off camera on here, and it was already starting to get to the evening, and I walked in the front, and there was a gentleman and a lady that was just kind of in the front of the building inside talking. And so I'm a pretty personable guy, so I just kind of opened the door and I was like, hey, excuse me, any chance any of you are the owner? And then the guy was like, yeah, actually, I own the building. I was like, okay, cool. I was like, hey, I'm just checking out your sign, and if you could tell me a little bit about it. I'm doing this book and I'm capturing these signs, and I know last time I was here it wasn't here. And so he told me about it, and he's like, yeah, we pressure washed it, and we had these guys come and we didn't know it was there either. And so he started telling me about it. He's like, so you're doing a book on ghost signs? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, I got something to show you. Let me take you inside. So I'm like, okay, cool. So anytime somebody says something like that, I usually get excited. I don't get scared or nervous usually, but and he was a pretty cool guy. And this is what I saw. So this is me seeing a ghost. So this is what I looked like when I saw it. So I wanted to make sure I showed you guys my expression of how excited I actually was when I saw this. So this building right here, that back right there is a separate building, and the one that I'm standing in was built about 10 years after the other building. So the building that has the writing on it was built around 1870, and the one I'm in is about 1880. So that sign right there has been enclosed for about 150 years now behind wall or plaster or whatever used to be there, but it didn't have a chance to weather like a lot of the other signs. So this was super cool. So this guy, his name's John Freeman. He owns the building. He just completely gutted the building. And I talked to him, and he's just a historian. He just loves history and everything about history. So he saw this building. He grew up in Seymour. It was falling into disrepair. He reached out to the owners, asked if they would sell it. They said no. He called them a couple months later. He's like, come on, your windows are this and that. Your windows are falling in. Please sell it to me. They said no. He went back, it was back and forth. And then finally they were like, all right, we'll sell it to you. So he bought it and completely gutted it, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's ready for new life. But this is one of the signs that we found, and I'm going to show you. Let's see, I think it's on. Yeah, this is the one that's on the 3rd floor. So the one I showed you before was the 2nd floor sign, or maybe this one's the 2nd floor. The other one's the 3rd floor, and I'll show you the juxtaposed ones with them on top of each other. Television. Yep, and that's the one that actually made the book cover right there too. There we go. So that's the juxtaposed version. So 3rd floor on the top, 2nd floor right there. And I purposely put them like that in the book, so when you look at it, you're kind of looking at it like a dollhouse. But that was really, really cool. So that's on page 170. So his future with that is to maybe make an Airbnb or event space with it or something. The rest of the building is pretty cool, but those are the only 2 ghost signs. And those are some of my favorites that I had. So this is the basement. That's John Freeman up there on the top. That's the black building right there, the Bollinger Hancock building right there on the corner. And this basement is so cool. So this building has a double basement. I didn't know old buildings back then had a double basement, But this is the first basement that you see right there, and then under it had like a cellar, more of like a dungeon type of basement, like what you would think of a 1870s type of building. But he made this just this really, really cool hangout. And he's got whiskey glasses, and the craps table in the back, that's from the Sands in Las Vegas. That's the actual Sands table. So he's got all kinds of cool stuff. And in his basement, his lower basement, he's got even more cool stuff. So I did a documentary on him also, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. So along the way, unfortunately, some of the signs were destroyed. So as I mentioned, I started taking a lot of these ghost sign pictures in 2018. So when it came time to make the book in 2025, some of them, it had been 5, 6, 7 years since I had been there. So I was revisiting some of them. Some of them I wasn't sure if they were still there. Some of them I assumed were gone because I knew the buildings were so bad that I knew it was just a matter of time. So some of them even completely collapsed into the street, which is kind of crazy. So here's one of them, the Lowe's clothing store. I don't know if anybody remembers this in the news. This happened in July of 2022. The Lowe's clothing store, right around 7 o'clock in the evening, just spontaneously collapsed and crumbled onto Lincoln Way into downtown LaPorte. So the black building that you see on the left, that's actually the building that says Lowe's on it. So it's the other two buildings. And they collapsed because decades ago, they expanded the building and they did some things they shouldn't have done that redistributed the weight in an improper way. That's usually why these buildings fall down, is because of a remodel and because it's just not strong enough to hold up the brick walls. Those brick walls were very heavy. So this one collapsed into the street in July of 2022. And then this one right here, the G.C. Murphy's 5 and Dime in Linton, Indiana. So in July of 2025 of this year. So this is, I already had my script deadline done. I think they were doing all the last minute stuff. The G.C. Murphy store in Linton, Indiana spontaneously buckled and collapsed and fell onto the street. So I'm actually going to play the video for you because it was actually all caught on video. It's pretty crazy. So that's my picture that's in the book. That's all the way on the left. It says G.C. Murphy. I don't know what the company, I think that stands for company. And then on the right side, that's after it collapsed. The sign is right behind where that red sign is right there. You can't see it because it's kind of in the shadow, and part of the sign came collapsing in, but that's where the sign was. You could see the doors match each other. And then if you'll watch, I'm going to play the video right there. You can see right in the center of the video, the walls are just going to start smoking because they started just kicking out dust, and then the whole thing comes down. Yeah, here it goes. Yeah, that was pretty dramatic. Yeah. So.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Who was videotaping that? What is that?
So it's a security camera from across the street. Yeah, it was like somebody's Ring camera or something like that. Yeah. So it just, I know it's almost like they set it up, right? You know, it's like, hey, so. So that was pretty wild, and I saw that on the news, I think on Facebook. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, I took a picture of that building first thing, and so I called the publisher right away. I was like, hey, can I make an edit because one of the buildings just collapsed? And they're like, yeah, we got to add that in there. So I made sure I added that in there. So and I want to show you guys that video because that is pretty random that happened. So local ghost signs in this book. I tried to get as many ghost signs as I could. I did my best to look in, especially in our old cities. There are no ghost signs in Cedar Lake that I can find, or at least in the traditional sense. There aren't any in St. John. There aren't any in Cherville. A lot of these towns are simply just too new. Even though the core of the downtown, of course, is old, the development of the towns, as we all know, has really happened over the last 25, 30 years. But I was able to find one in Chesterton, 7 of them in Gary. Gary's a mecca. I mean, I don't probably have to tell you guys that. You guys know that there's a lot of stuff going on in Gary and a lot of signs and stuff like that. I did find 2 in Hammond, 1 in Kentland, LaPorte, Lowell, Michigan City, North Judson, and Valpo. So those were ones. There were a couple that I found too that didn't make the cut, and I'll kind of tell you about those a little bit too. But those are the ones that did, and I'm going to show you some of the ones that did. Chesterton. So does anybody go to Chesterton very often, or? So this is right on the side of Peggy Sue's Diner. So it's on the north side. It faces the railroad tracks. So next time you go into Chesterton, take a look up there. And I want to say one thing first. So as I show you these signs, when you go into towns in the future, it's going to change how you look at buildings. So I want to warn everybody that as I'm pointing these out, you might look at things a little differently next time you're in town. East Chicago. So we have Huber's Funeral Home. So this is on Columbus Drive. So you know where this one is, right? Yeah. Gary, can you guys spot the one that's in here? Yeah. Did anybody ever shop at Gordon's department store back when it was open in Gary? Yeah, it's been closed for quite a while, but Gordon's department store was quite a staple in downtown Gary on Broadway Avenue for a long, long time. And here's a few more in Gary. So the Harkland Company, this sign actually just revealed itself in 2021. If you've been in Gary anytime recently, you know that they're doing a lot of work on Broadway, mainly demoing. So if you've driven down Broadway anywhere between 80 and 94 all the way up to 5th Avenue, a lot of it's gone. So especially when you get into the core of the downtown area. So in 2021, they tore a lot of the buildings down that are between like 6th and 8th Street. So this is on the west side of Broadway, and it revealed this sign. So the other building was abutted right up against it, so it protected the sign. The sign's in really, really good shape and still is to this day. The top one with the car in it, that's gold medal flower, and it also has Coca-Cola over it. You can only see that sign in the wintertime because there's so much brush there. It hasn't been cut, according to Google Maps, probably since 2007. So it's just kind of growing away there. And then that's, you can't really see it. It says Greens Paints on the top. So that Greens Paints it's on Broadway. It's a little bit south of IUN. And then this is one of my favorite one right here. So this is Zenith, and I got a little goodie in there too. While I was taking the picture of that Zenith sign, the Goodyear blimp was flying over. so that was kind of like an extra bonus. You know, how often we see the blimp outside? So I just happened to take the picture. I was like, oh, I'm gonna put the blimp in it too. I got two classics right here. So in Zenith to me always reminded me of, like, I remember being a kid. If you had a Zenith guitar, you know, or a Zenith VCR, your family probably had a little bit of money. And then on the bottom here, we have Superior Beverage, and then the First United Life Insurance Company, and that's on the corner of Broadway and 5th. So those are the Gary ones. In Hammond, I included the gold medal flower one, of course, and that's, I don't even know how to pronounce it. Maybe somebody can help me. It's either Seifers or Cyphers Furniture. It was a department store on State Street. So anybody know? I think it's Cyphers. I'm pretty sure it's Cyphers, but I couldn't find anything on YouTube of anybody saying it. I tried to find that. So here's a juxtaposed version. That's 2019, 2026. So we talk about how fragile some of these signs are and how rare they are. This kind of shows the deterioration over 7 years. Now this is a little bit different because a lot of that black over there is the soot from the fire. The picture I took on the left was about maybe a year after the fire, and you could see most of the soot has worn off, but the soot has also taken a little bit of it away. I think part of the eventually sign, where you see eventually the bottom part has come off, but it's also revealed some more words. It says the word musical on the top. You couldn't even see that before. I'm actually kind of curious to what the rest of that says, because musical has nothing to do with gold medal flower, so it tells me it's probably another business, a different ad or something. So that's kind of neat. This one's in Kentland, Indiana. This one isn't necessarily the prettiest one, but it's kind of fun to look at because you can find all kinds of words in it. And before I came over here, I even asked my son, I was like, hey, do you see any words in here? And he's looking, he's like, securities. And he's like pointing the words in there. So this one's just kind of interesting, like, again, because it has so much going on in it. The LaPorte, Indiana one I showed you from before, and then there's another one. It's called Leroy's Market. Leroy's Market was a store. It was like one of the main grocery stores in LaPorte, in downtown LaPorte, like in the 1930s, 1940s. Goes back a long, long way. And then the Vintage Rose took over the building. That's actually not as old of a sign. That company has been gone for about 10 years. I actually spoke with the owner of the Vintage Rose. His name is Jack Allen. He's a really old gentleman. He's a historian for LaPorte and has all kinds of information. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he was a really, really good guy to talk to. He gave me some info about the Leroy's Market. This one's in Lowell. Is anybody from Lowell that's here today? You're from Lowell? Okay, do you guys recognize this sign? Right. Okay, so it's not there now. So this one was in Lowell. This sign had been there for a long time. It was restored at some point in the past. I couldn't find the exact year. I know it was restored before 2007. And then when I went to visit the site, maybe about 2 years ago, sadly it was sandblasted away. So it is no longer there, but it used to direct people. I don't know if is that Commercial Avenue that goes north. So, or is it Mill Street? Mill and Commercial?
Commercial is
that's the main street. That's the main drag, right? So it's on Commercial, and I think it's Mill Street that connects with there. I don't remember if it's Mill, but it used to be the main road for people going to Chicago. So that used to be a hand that pointed, hey, go to Chicago that way. So So that's been there for a long time. And there's actually another ghost sign on the top right. It's got red painted over it. I have no idea what it says, but it's just kind of painted over. Michigan City, the W Wright Laundry, and then Seeps Beer. That hasn't been around for a long time. And then we have Coca-Cola. I can't tell what the one on the left side is. My best guess is that it's a tobacco ad just because of the time and stuff. My guess is it's a tobacco ad, but I'm not 100% sure. This one was in North Judson, Mail Pouch Tobacco. They've since repainted this one, and now it's bright yellow again. And it has a whole courtyard on the other side where you can eat for there's like a little cafe. And Valparaiso. So this one, if you guys are familiar with Valparaiso, everybody knows the sign if you're familiar with Valparaiso, or you go to Valpo very often. It's on the northeast side of the square, just off the corner in the former jewelry store building. And this is Palace Restaurant. They used to have a couple of them. I think there was one in Chesterton and one in Valparaiso, and they turned into a confectionery. They were really popular in the 1940s. Local signs that didn't make the cut. I tried to include as many local ones as I could because, of course, I'm biased. I'm from Northwest Indiana. Anybody ever go to Ricochet Tacos? You guys probably been to Ricochet maybe at some point. It's not there now. They've closed now. It's going to be turning into Parisi's, I believe. But at the very top, if you go in there, so whenever Parisi's opens, there is a sign up there. And until maybe a week ago, I didn't know what that sign represented. I could tell it says standard of, and that's all that you could see. I found this picture right here about a week ago, and that's the building. And if you look on the top left, you could see what might be a B or a P. But given all my research, I know that that's a B because that says Bull Durham. And then this ad right over here says Standard of the World. And that picture that you can barely see that's kind of faded is a picture of a bull, which is the Bull Durham bull. So that was kind of cool. I wish I would have been able to include that, but because I was inside the building, I technically needed a property release, and I wasn't able to get a hold of the owners, and they were going back and forth and with the business, so I wasn't able to include it. I really wanted to put one in for Crown Point, at least have one. A couple other local signs that didn't make the cut. This one at the top is from Gary. It's like I believe it's a roofer one. It says something roof, but I can't quite tell what it says. This one right here, SA, we're above the beer and wine sign. That actually was a huge sign from back in the day, but there was other things that were blocking it, and about 20 years ago it all got pressure washed, but there was a sign covering that little piece. So it just was a little bit interesting, but it wasn't interesting enough to make the book, unfortunately. And then over here on the right, you could barely see it. It says the Lincoln Hotel. Back in the day, downtown Hammond had quite a few hotels. The Lincoln Hotel was one of them. But again, because of the shadowiness of the picture, it just wasn't a good quality picture, so I just didn't include it. A couple of northern Indiana ones that didn't make the cut. I have Larrabee's Best Flour and that hardware sign one right there. Now those didn't make the cut for two reasons. One, it's on a really shady side of the building. It wasn't an attractive picture, I didn't think. And second, those are most likely restored signs, so it wasn't as important for me to make sure that I documented them. I was okay on passing on them, but mainly because of the picture quality. And same thing with the one on the bottom and the one on the right. These are some of the choices that I had to go through when I'm choosing my signs. This one right here, you couldn't even tell that it was a sign. It was at one point, but it's so ambiguous that you can't even tell what it is. And same thing with up here. You could see the letters, but it just wasn't interesting enough to include in the book. And I didn't have enough backstory or information, so that didn't make the cut. Central Indiana ones, all of these. If anybody's ever been to Red Key, Indiana, Red Key is a really small town. It's kind of, I said, you're out from that. That's your hood out there. Red Key and Alexandria are really, really cool small towns that have lots and lots of signs. They've kind of taken note of what they've become known for, and they've hired people to restore some of the signs. So the top, I think the one on the top right is from Farmland, Indiana, but those ones are Red Key. I didn't include them because I had some other actual ghost signs from Red Key, and I didn't want to put too many restored ones in the book. And the one that's the cigar one right there, that's also a restored one. I just didn't have enough info to put on there. And then for Southern Indiana, so at the very top, that's Huntington, Indiana, which is down by Evansville. It says Greener Brothers. So I wish I had my drone at the time when I took that picture. I would have taken it so I could see what the rest of it says, but maybe one day when I get down there. Gold Medal Flower, that's in Luguti, Indiana, and that's just a restored version. Again, it's a nice picture, but it's another restored one. I had multiple restored Gold Medal Flower ones in the book, so I had to make a choice, and that one had to come out. And then it says Firestone on one of the buildings at the top, and I just didn't think it was an attractive picture. So I just didn't put it in because I didn't like the picture. Some of my favorite signs are from, this one's from the area, from Walkerton. It's kind of in the area, the sell sign. So I showed you that one in a previous one. The mail pouch tobacco sign, that's one of the only signs that isn't on a brick building. That's as you're driving into Flora, Indiana. So if you're between Lafayette and Flora and you're going into Flora. General Arthur, it's an old cigar company. That's in Anderson, Indiana. That's one of the most popular ones in all the ghost sign groups. When you see people in Indiana that are posting pictures of ghost signs, a lot of them post that one right there. And then the dry goods one over here, this one's really interesting because that building was painted pink about 10 or 15 years ago, and it's been slowly just peeling away, right? The weather's been, it's been weathered away, and it's revealing the sign. So every time I go by it, you could see a little bit more of it. So I still don't know what it says above. I just know it says dry goods, notions, and furnishings. But slowly, hopefully in 2 or 3 years, you might be able to see the top part. So I know that the owner of that building, he wants to leave that sign, and he really likes how it's weathering and stuff. So I'm not too worried about anything happening to that one. These were some of the best cities and the most difficult cities to find ghost signs. So I just want to throw these out there in case there was anybody that goes out and chases them. I mentioned Alexandria and Red Key, but also big cities, Indianapolis, of course, any of these old cities. Vincennes is fantastic. I forget myself that Vincennes is I think, the oldest city in the state of Indiana. And there's so much history in Vincennes. I had a blast just exploring Vincennes and learning about the Northwest Territory and the Indiana Territory and all this kind of stuff too. But I'm kind of a history nerd like that. But Terre Haute was great. Surprisingly, there's a couple cities that I couldn't find any ghost signs. And what I attribute that to is like Bloomington and West Lafayette, for example. West Lafayette just isn't old enough. It has Purdue. It's all Purdue-based. Everything in West Lafayette and Bloomington, both because of the university, everything goes up really, really quick. It's painted over. It's, spick and span. Everything's really, really nice. So towns like that are difficult. Columbus is also a really, really nice town that takes a lot of pride in their historic downtown buildings. So it's not very often that you see a sign like that unless the building's demolished. Carmel and Fishers, they're just way too new. I mean, Carmel and Fishers were barely even there 25 years ago. So there's just not much to find over there. Same thing with Granger. And along the journey, I've had some help. I've had some help getting the word out. Jerry Davich, if you guys know Jerry Davich, he's a columnist for the Times. He's also become a friend of mine. We befriended each other over 10 years ago. He did an article on me, and we just hit it off and kept in touch, and we go out to eat. And me and my wife and him and his wife are friends and stuff. So he wrote this great article in June, kind of getting the word out and just planting the seeds to everybody that, hey, this project's coming up. So that was really cool. And also Joseph Pete wrote the article that came out in the paper a couple days ago. So just wanted to give them a shout out because they've been helping me promote it. So what am I up to lately? So now that I have the ghost sign book up, what am I doing now? So give you just kind of a recap real quick. In 2022, I filmed a 13-minute documentary following NASCAR driver Josh Bilicki. So if you guys watch NASCAR, Josh is still one of the drivers. Sometimes he kind of ends up towards the back of the pack. He hasn't gotten first place yet, but I hold out hope for him. But I did do a 13-minute video where I followed him on a race day. I joined him up at like 10 in the morning, followed him until 7 o'clock. There was a rain delay. There's all kinds of stuff. It's pretty cool. You can go on YouTube. If you type in Josh Bilicki on YouTube, it'll pop right up. You'll see that image right there pop up as the video. I was reunited with John Mellencamp in 2024. So he's getting older. He's getting a little older. Somebody told me he looks like a ghost sign himself. So I couldn't really argue that. So I reconnected with him in 2024. As I mentioned, I worked with him in 2003, 21 years before this. And so I was part of the crew. They put a statue on the campus at Indiana University outside the auditorium. And so I was part of the media crew. And so as he was finishing up, I kind of pulled him aside. I was like, John, I was one of the students that worked with you. And he's like, oh, no kidding. Oh, he's fist bumped me. I was like, yeah, let's get pictures. Yeah. So everybody's looking at me because I was the only person that took a picture with them. And everybody else is just kind of like, who's this guy? So I was like, I worked with him 20 years ago. I'm sure he didn't remember me, but. It was still fun. It was very exciting. And if you ever want to see the video that we made, it's on YouTube and you can watch it for free. It's called Trouble No More, the making of a John Mellencamp video. It's 55 minutes long. I was a production assistant, which means that I took all the raw video home and I got to watch all the raw video and then I wrote down what happened. I'd say at 2 minutes and 34 seconds, John yells the F word or something, or whatever. Like there was all kinds of crazy, So we did it. We worked together and we got to reunite in 2024, which was really nice. In 2025, I got to meet Governor Holcomb. So just before he left office, I went down and met Governor Holcomb, and I gave him this present. This is the county courthouse picture that I showed you earlier. And we talked for 30 minutes, pretty much about Northwest Indiana. I told him about some of my projects that I'm doing, but I really just kind of told him about how cool Northwest Indiana was. I thanked him for being a governor that actually came up to Northwest Indiana and didn't ignore us. And, politics aside, we all know that we're sometimes kind of like the stepchild of Chicago, and we're not part of Indiana, but we are, but we're not, that whole thing. So I thanked him, and it was just like, hey, we have a lot of governors that haven't come up here. Thank you for paying attention to us. So other things, I'm can't even speak. I'm sorry. I'm an official photographer for the Festival of the Lakes for Hammond. So this is me with just some of the bands. So this is really fun. I get a whole week in July that it's just crazy. I sleep about 2 hours a night, which is crazy because I get home at like 1 in the morning and I have to load all my pictures because they want to have them all up and showing everybody in the morning when everybody wakes up. Hey, let's recap last night. And so I'm usually up until about 4 in the morning, and then I get up about 7 or 8 in the morning and I do it again because I do all the morning events too. So it's a really, really rough week. If you see me on a Wednesday, that's probably me on a Wednesday right there on the left. And then I probably couldn't even have put any Sunday pictures on there because by the time Sunday comes, it's pretty rough. And I'm doing lots of book signing events. So outside of this presentation, I'll have a book signing event at Barnes & Noble on the 28th. So Saturday, Barnes & Noble, and that's the Cherville one. And then Saturday in Valparaiso. The following Saturday on April 4th. So I've been doing a lot of book signings. My last book signing was November 1st in Cherville, and I had a line out the door for 5 hours. It was very exhausting, but it was great. It was absolutely wonderful. I couldn't believe it. I was overwhelmed by the response that I had, but no joke. It was from 11 to 3. I stayed until 5 o'clock, and there was a line out the door about 20 deep. Nancy was there. Yeah, it was pretty long line the whole time. You were there pretty early too. So I've been doing a lot of those school events, things like that too. I do some events for schools. I have a new project coming out. It's going to be a Northwest Indiana coloring book, and I have Cedar Lake on here. Yeah, I was excited to show you guys this one right here. So this one's actually, it's already done. I've been so busy, I haven't been able to finish it up and do all like the things that I need to do. You need to submit it, get it copyrighted, and there's just some technical things that need to happen. This one's a lot bigger than my Northwest Indiana book. I actually covered every single city and town in Northwest Indiana. So I think there's 53 illustrations. And the way that I'll probably sell this is it'll be offered as a PDF. So you can just buy the file and just print whatever you want, when you want it, as you want it. And then it's like a forever coloring book. So that'll be fun. So I'm going to try and get that out as soon as I can. And one of the last things I'll share with you is that this is actually a really big project. I'm working on an upcoming documentary series. So I haven't actually even told anybody about this. Nobody on Facebook. I just haven't. I've just been kind of quiet about it. So along the journey, doing all these go signs, I met Julie down in Indianapolis, who had the gold medal flower sign, and the roof was ripped off. And I went down there and did a documentary on her. I also did a documentary on the Seymour, Indiana building, and John Freeman, who did this rehab to the building and a bunch of other stuff too. And then on the right, I have another episode too. So I've actually filmed 4 of the 12 episodes. I'm still looking for 8 more stories from around Indiana. I haven't decided how I'm gonna theme this whole documentary series. Is it just gonna be stories about Indiana? Do I want it to be the Midwest? Do I want to pigeonhole myself and make it only Indiana? Because I want to make sure that I have a wide audience too. So, but my plan is to tell untold stories around Indiana. So things that maybe you guys haven't heard. So I mentioned before the gold medal flower, and Julie, who had that building and the roof was ripped off. So the whole story of having this developer come and save the sign because he wants to turn that into maybe a future ice cream shop or donut shop, because it's a very small space. You can't make it into office space or anything like that. So it's got to be like a little sweet shop. So, but he plans to save and preserve all that. So So I do the documentary talking about that, and all of them are going to be between 15 and 25 minutes long. Hopefully I'll be able to sell the series to like Amazon, and then you'll be able to stream it and stuff like that too. I'm taking it one step at a time right now. Right now I still got to find the rest of the stories. And yeah, and that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Yes.
Question regarding the ghost sign.
Yes.
Are we to assume that back in the day, the advertiser came to the store and said, could we put this big sign on your building?
Sure. So what happened was there was a whole group of people that went around the country. They were called wall dogs. So they would go around the country and they would look for building owners with good facing buildings or sides of buildings that were facing streets or something like that. And they would pitch to them they'd say, hey, we'll paint your whole building, and we want to put this advertise here, but we'll paint your whole building for free. So they did that with barns a lot. So the mail pouch barn, back in the day, the mail pouch would offer to paint your entire barn for free, and they would come by every 5 years and repaint it as long as they could put the mail pouch logo on it or tobacco sign. So all these farmers all around Indiana were getting all these barns painted for free, and it was great because they were trying to save money. They didn't want to spend money on painting a barn all the time. So, but there were gentlemen that went around. Some of them worked directly for the companies, for like Coca-Cola, the large companies. Mail pouch tobacco was notorious, and Bull Durham was notorious for sending people out and painting signs. If you were to add up all of the ghost signs in the whole entire country, Bull Durham would probably dominate all of them combined by 2 or 3 times, because there's so many Bull Durham ones that are out there that are legacy signs, or they're painted on bricks, and they were using lead paint, so you could still see them. So, but yeah, they were called wall dogs. Yeah, it was a very, very unique art form. Yeah, I wonder how they got up there. If they had ladders and that's what I always wonder. Yeah, yeah.
What are the legal issues you run into taking pictures and stuff?
So I can take pictures of any of the things outside, as long as if I'm on public property. So if I'm on public property, there is a statute that you can take a picture of any building that's built before 1931. It's like a 95-year thing or something like that. So I think now it'd be 1931. You can take any picture of it. You don't have to request any kind of permission from a property owner. You generally don't have to do that if you're on a public right away now, unless you're really focusing on like that company's logo or something like that. As far as like Coca-Cola and all of that, I made sure, like with my publisher, I was like, hey, are we good on doing this? They're like, yeah, we did all the other books. They had the experience of having 8 other books done. So I just kind of was like, okay, you guys know what you're doing. So I didn't really ask too much about that. My main concern was getting property releases for anything that I took inside. So if I was inside of the building, John Freeman, I technically didn't have him sign the thing because we like bonded over 4 hours of talking about his basement and all this other crazy stuff that by the time I left, I just forgot to have him sign the form. So and he did the whole documentary. So I know he's not going to come back later and say, hey, I didn't allow you to do this because, but yeah, I mean, as far as anything else, most everything was outside. Yeah, and yeah, even Julie's, I didn't, because technically it wasn't even outside anymore when I went and took it the last one. So the one that's in the book was technically outside. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
That coloring book is interesting.
Thank you.
About 2007, I believe it was, the chamber here had a fundraiser where we had a coloring book of Cedar Lake.
Oh, yeah.
And all the businesses or organizations each submitted a photo or something, and they put it together.
Oh, cool.
Would you be interested in doing something like that?
Well, I'll tell you what. So I usually don't share my pending proposals that I have out there, but I have 3 pending proposals out there to do Sweet Dreams Hammond, Sweet Dreams Crown Point, and Sweet Dreams Valparaiso. In order to do those books, my publisher has already okayed it, so I have the green light to do them. I need to get them funded. So because the geography is so small, For me to pitch to the publisher and say, hey, we want to do the Crown Point one, they want me to commit to a certain number of copies to buy, which is okay because I do these events and stuff and I know I can sell the copies. But I need to do the funding ahead of time. So what I'm planning on doing is to get involvement with companies that are local. So like say Crown Point, for example, get 10 companies that are local, do an illustration that's about them. Now the companies would have to meet certain parameters. They'd have to essentially have no chance of changing their name, so it couldn't be like a car dealership. I wouldn't put a car dealership in there. They have to be in the town for a certain length of time, so it can't be a restaurant that just started a year ago or something like that. So there would be certain parameters, because it would have to be a long-standing business, because I wouldn't want to publish the book and then the business closed 6 months later, and then I'm like, oh, great, So, but I do want to do that for Hammond, for Crown Point, and for Valparaiso. I'm willing to do it for any town that wants to do it. I think that the Goodnight or the Sweet Dreams Northwest Indiana book is a really, really awesome opportunity for towns to be able to showcase everything that they have. Because it's and as I pitched it to the mayor of Hammond, I said, hey, this isn't a book, this is a marketing piece. This is a marketing piece for you to take and to show off all of your projects that you've done for the city of Hammond, and now you have them in an illustrated book. And when you send out flyers and brochures and magazines, how often do you guys keep junk mail at your house? I mean, maybe a little while if you think that there might be something, but generally it gets thrown away. How long do you keep a book in your house? I mean, books have a 10-year lifespan, especially if you have kids. So, and if you're reading a lot, maybe it's not 10 years. But so I pitched him that, and he was like, "Oh wow, you're right." I was like, "These people are going to have this book about Hammond in their house for 10 years, and it's talking about all this stuff." So, so that's an awesome idea, and that's what I have out there right now. But we can talk more about that and do a Cedar Lake one for sure. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
New Carlisle? I'm sorry.
New Carlisle, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been to downtown New Carlisle. I've even been through down 20 where they're building all the data centers. It just looks crazy when I drive. So my wife is from Mishawaka. So we go through New Carlisle. Usually when we drive up there, we take 94 to 2 and take 2 all the way to the bypass. So yeah, we drive right through New Carlisle. But I have been downtown too. Super cute downtown, yeah. Yeah.
Valparaiso.
Mm-hmm.
You said there was only one.
There's only one in Valparaiso. There's only one that I found in Valparaiso. So my guess is that downtown Valparaiso probably has several more, but they're wedged between the buildings on Lincoln Way. Yeah. So the only way to really be able to know is to go through like old archival pictures, looking at Lincoln Way in like the 20s and stuff, and looking for the buildings that that might be covered up now. Sometimes you can do that and you can see that. That's how I found the Crown Point one. I was just looking through old pictures because I knew that there had been something out there. And but yeah, the Valparaiso, I wish I would have found more in Valparaiso. I just found that Palace Restaurant one.
Did you contact the Porter County Museum?
Not yet, I haven't, no. Yeah.
It's a good resource.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm gonna see if there's more out there. I'm hoping. I'm always hunting. I still have a folder that's full of screenshots of more, so if I end up getting 180 more, I might reach out to the publisher and say, hey, do you want to do a volume 2? I don't know.
I grew up in Indy. Can you tell me where that where that building was, where they took the roof off and you have the gold medal campsite?
It's on 10th Street. So it's on the near east side on 10th Street, about a mile east of 65.
Okay.
So it's pretty close to downtown. Yeah. They're doing a lot of work in that area to revitalize that area. So even that part of the documentary, I've produced that whole part. But I'm going to go down there and talk to like the councilman that's in the area and talk about what more they're going to do, like specifically in that area. Yeah. And then the other one was in Irvington, the one that had the notions and furnishings with the pink building that was peeling.
Oh, okay.
That's in Irvington. Yeah. Yep. Irvington's a cool town too. I didn't know anything about Irvington until about 2 years ago, and it's really cool. Yeah.
Just east of it.
East of Irvington? Oh, cool. Okay, so yeah, it was a really cool area. I liked it. Anybody else?
Already autographed books.
Oh yeah. So I do have books. I have all 3 of my books available. I mentioned I also have my IU book, my Sweet Dreams Northwest Indiana books here. They're $20 each. The Fading Ads one is $30. 10% of the proceeds go back to the museum, so I'm donating 10% of anything. And I really think that you guys are going to like it. So I tried my best to tell the backstories of as many as many stories as I could. I did have a limit. Sometimes I look on the page now, even when I go through it, I was like, oh, there's a lot of white space. I could have talked a little bit more, but there was a limit. I was limited, and I actually went just over my 20,000 limit, but they were okay with it. So, yeah. So thank you guys all for coming out. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to sign books. I'm happy to chit chat. If you guys want to ask me questions like outside of the group or anything like that, that's totally fine. I can hang out. I don't have anywhere to be. So this is where I'm at today. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.